prostitute, but she somehow did a U-turn and became an exalted Vaishnavi. And there was some discussion where this story of Pingala was referred to in Bhakti Sandarbha. Bhakti Sandarbha is a writing, part of a large writing of Jiva Goswami on the teachings of Bhakti. So one of the messages we heard in this regard was to come to Bhakti. We all know this. To come to Bhakti, it takes the association of a bhakta to come to Bhakti. And when Bhakti comes, then comes detachment. So Pingala had this like super detachment experience. Attachment, and then super detachment. And then the flow of her devotion became very high, very exalted devotion. So how does detachment, how is it possible? Of course, there's the negation kind, false renunciation kind, and then there's the actual renunciation kind. The actual renunciation is through association. So we heard in commentaries that like Prahlad, very interesting narration, like Prahlad, the living entities that he knew of, how many living entities are there? Too many to even think of. So he, by his wishing well, they became spiritually benefited. But there's so many other living entities one can't possibly think of. But by that well-wishing, one can become liberated. So Jagai and Madhya were the recipients of the well-wishing of Lord Nityananda. What he wanted was that Lord Chaitanya be glorified. And he wanted that they be relieved of their sinful lives. But it's stronger than that, reasonable to say. His love of his life was Lord Chaitanya should be glorified. So the impacted lesson, the take home, as they say these days, for us, is not just wanting to be in service to others. Wanting to be in service to others is very nice. Wanting to be in service to others is very nice. It's discussed really beautifully by Jiva Goswami. It's commented upon in relation to the Ajamila story. The beginning, there are different stages. He has Sanskrit phrases for different stages of bhakti. But even just the preliminary stage of liking to do service, ultimately, that propensity is service unto Krishna, but liking to do service, not necessarily having Krishna as the object of one being served, but liking to do service in the association of devotees can lead to attachment to Krishna and release from material bondage. So the application point for us is, as we're trying to do what we're to be of service to others, let it be the holistic picture, but the center is on the soul's deliverance to being connected with Krishna, and just being the well-wisher for such persons. For what reason? That Krishna should be pleased. Then that's very powerful. That's the bhakti factor, added to the service-mindedness factor. Krishna should be pleased. And that was Lord Chaitanya. We heard it over and over. He was a madman. In Lord Nityananda's glories, he's a madman. Not even recognizing what he was doing, but being completely impelled by his love for Lord Chaitanya. So when he's approaching Jagai Madhya, it's for the pleasure of and the glorification of Lord Chaitanya. So that brings special bhakti strength or spiritual strength to our efforts of reaching out to others. We all do that in different ways, in different degrees, in different capacities. But the listen carefully and hear how Lord Nityananda and of course Haridas, they're fully transcendental beings. So their reaching out to Jagai and Madhya was for their benefit, but it was for the honor and glorification of Lord Chaitanya. Bear that in mind as you're hearing this. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda Prabhu, whose arms extend down to their knees, who have golden yellow complexions, who inaugurated the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Their eyes resemble the petals of a lotus flower. They are the maintainers of the living entities, the best of the brahmanas, the protectors of religious principles in this age, the benefactors of the universe, and the most merciful of all incarnations. All glories to Mahaprabhu Sri Gaurasundara. All glories to Nityananda, whose body is the object of everyone's worship. In this way, Lord Vishvambar performed pastimes in Navadvip that were not seen by everyone. Ordinary people saw him like before, simply as Nimai Pandit. They could not see anything of his characteristics beyond this. When the Lord entered into the association of his servants, he floated in happiness. He would reveal himself to each devotee in proportion to the devotee's good fortune. When he left their association, he would conceal himself. One day, the Lord suddenly ordered Nityananda and Haridas as follows: Listen, Nityananda, listen, Haridas, go out and preach my order everywhere. Go to every house and beg in this way. Chant the names of Krishna, worship Krishna, follow Krishna's instructions. Apart from this, you should not speak or have any others speak anything else. At the end of the day, come and give me your report. I will take up my chakra and cut off the heads of those who will not chant after being requested by you. On hearing this order, all the Vaishnavas laughed. Who has the power to transgress his order? His order is such that even Nityananda carries it on his head. Anyone who does not believe this is not very intelligent. If one serves Advaita, but does not accept Chaitanya, then Advaita will destroy him without remorse. Accepting the Lord's order on their heads, Nityananda and Haridas smiled and immediately went out on the street. Being ordered by the Lord, the two went door to door and requested everyone: chant the name of Krishna, sing the glories of Krishna, and engage in the worship of Krishna. Krishna is your life. Krishna is your wealth. Krishna is your very life and soul. Oh, brothers, chant the name of Krishna with full attention. In this way, the two controllers of the universe went to every house as they wandered throughout Nadia. Both were dressed as sannyasis. At every house they went, they were eagerly invited to take their meal. Nityananda and Haridas would then say, "Our only request is that you chant the names of Krishna, worship Krishna, and follow the teachings of Krishna." After speaking in this way, the two departed. Those who were pious became most pleased. Hearing the unprecedented words from the mouths of those two, various people found varieties of pleasure while discussing various related topics. Some happily said, "We will do, we will do." Others said, "These two are crazy because of bad advice. You have become mad on account of bad association. Why have you come to make us mad? Many sober and civilized persons have become mad in this way. Nimai Pandit has spoiled them all." As soon as the two went to the houses of those who were not allowed to see Lord Chaitanya's dancing, those people said, "Beat them! Beat them!" Someone said, "Perhaps these two are spies of a thief. They are wandering door to door on the pretext of preaching. Why would a sujana means sujana, person, sujana, okay. Why would a sujana act in that way? If they come again, we will take them to the king." On hearing such talk, Nityananda and Haridas laughed. On the strength of Lord Chaitanya's order, they were not frightened. In this way, the two daily wandered from door to door and then reported to Vishrambar at the end of the day. One day, they saw two drunkards on the street. The two were fully intoxicated and acted like great rogues. There were unlimited stories about the two, for there was no sin they had not committed. Although they were brahmanas, they were always engaged in drinking wine, eating beef, plundering others' wealth, and burning others' houses. They avoided royal punishment and the notices of the town authorities. They did not pass a day without wine and meat. The two would roll on the street and they would punch anyone they met. As people watched these incidents from a distance, Nityananda and Haridas arrived there. Sometimes the two displayed affection for each other, and sometimes they pulled each other's hair while cursing. Sometimes they ruined the caste of the brahmanas of Madhya, and sometimes under the influence of wine they would speak solacing words to someone. Each type of sin became manifest in the bodies of those two, except the sin of blaspheming Vaishnavas. They happily spent their days and nights in the company of other drunkards. Therefore, they had no opportunity to blaspheme the Vaishnavas. The assembly in which Vaishnavas are blasphemed will be ruined. The assembly in which Vaishnavas are blasphemed will be ruined, even if all other religious principles are observed. If an assembly of sannyasis indulges in blasphemy, then that assembly is more sinful than an assembly of drunkards. A drunkard will be delivered in due course of time, but one who is engaged in blasphemy will never attain the goal of life. Even after studying the scriptures, many persons lose their intelligence and bring about their utter ruin by blaspheming Nityananda. The two punched and abused each other as Nityananda and Haridas watched from a distance. Nityananda personally asked some people, "To which caste do these two belong? Why do they act like that?" The people replied, "Oh, Gosai, they are two brahmanas. Their virtuous father and mother both came from respectable families. Their ancestors have all lived in Madhya and were all free from the slightest fault. These two qualified persons gave up their religiosity and have been engaged in such sinful activities since birth. Considering that they were most sinful, their relatives rejected them. Now they freely wander about with other drunkards. When the residents of Nadia see these two, they fear that the two may someday burn their house. There is no sin that these two have not committed. They plunder, steal, drink wine, and eat meat." After hearing this, the kind-hearted Nityananda mercifully contemplated how to deliver the two. Thinking, the Lord has incarnated to deliver the sinful. Where will he find such sinners as these? The Lord secretly manifests himself. People who do not see his influence make fun of him. If the Lord bestows his mercy on these two, then the whole world will know his glories. If I can reveal Lord Chaitanya to them, then I, Nityananda, will be known as Lord Chaitanya's servant. Now they are fully intoxicated and do not know themselves. If only they could become intoxicated like this under the influence of Krishna's names. If the two cry as they say, "Oh my Lord," then my wandering will be successful. If persons who previously took bath in the Ganges with their clothes on, when they touch the shadow of these two, considering themselves as purified, as having taken bath in the Ganges by seeing them, then my name will be remembered. The glories of Sri Nityananda Prabhu are unlimited. He has incarnated to deliver the fallen souls. After contemplating in this way, the Lord said to Haridas, "Oh, Haridas, look at their miserable condition. Although they are Brahmanas, their behavior is most abominable. These two will not be able to avoid the punishment of Yamaraj. When you were beat practically to death by the Yavanas, you thought about even their welfare. If you think about the welfare of these two, then they will certainly be delivered. The Lord never neglects to fulfill your desire." This truth was personally disclosed by the Lord. Let the entire world see Lord Chaitanya's influence when he delivers these two. Just as the Puranas sing about the deliverance of Ajamila, now let the three worlds directly see such pastimes. Haridas knew well the glories of Nityananda Prabhu, therefore he could understand that the two were already delivered. Haridas Prabhu said, "Listen, O Mahasaya, your desire is certainly the Lord's desire. You deceive me, just as one deceives an animal, and in this way you repeatedly teach me." Lord Nityananda smiled and embraced Haridas. He then softly spoke as follows: "Let us go and inform these two drunkards of the Lord's order that we are carrying around. The Lord's order is for everyone to worship Krishna, but this is especially meant for the most sinful. Our responsibility is to simply repeat the Lord's order. If people do not follow, that's his responsibility." Lord Chaitanya. Then Nityananda and Haridas went to inform the two of the Lord's order. Stately people prohibited them, saying, "Don't go near them. If they catch you, you will lose your lives. We hide inside the house and tremble. How can you dare approach them? These two have no respect for sannyasis. They have killed unlimited brahmanas and cows." Nevertheless, the two Prabhus chanted the name of Krishna and joyfully went before the two. They came only close enough to be heard, and then loudly informed them of the Lord's order. "Say Krishna, worship Krishna, and chant the names of Krishna. Krishna is your mother. Krishna is your father. Krishna is your life and wealth. Krishna has incarnated for your benefit. Therefore give up all sinful activities and worship Krishna." On hearing their call, the two turned their heads, and their eyes became red with anger. After lifting their heads and seeing the forms of the sannyasis, the two ran towards them, shouting, "Catch them! Catch them!" Nityananda and Haridas ran quickly as the two rogues chased them, shouting, "Stop! Stop!" Abusing them with harsh words, they chased behind the two Prabhus, who ran away out of fear. People said, "We warned them before. Now these two sannyasis are in danger." All the atheists smiled and thought, Lord Narayan has given the proper punishment to those two impostors. The pious Brahmanas said, "Save them, Krishna! Save them, Krishna!" They then left that place in fear. The two rogues chased behind the two lords as the two lords ran away. Although the rogues declared they had caught them, they were unable. Nityananda said, "We thought it would be good to turn them into Vaishnavas, but we will be lucky if we survive today." Haridas said, "Oh Lord, what can I say? Today I will die prematurely because of your ideas. Because you have tried to give Krishna's instructions to drunkards, we have received proper punishment, almost losing our lives." Speaking in this way, the two lords laughed as they ran away. The two rogues chased after them while shouting abusive words. The two drunkards had fat bodies, so they could hardly walk. Yet somehow they ran swiftly. The two rogues said, "Oh, brothers, where will you go? How will you escape Jagai and Madhya today? You do not know that Jagai and Madhya live here. Wait a moment and see who's behind you." Hearing the words, the two lords ran in fear as they called out, "Save us, Krishna! Save us, Krishna! Hey, Govinda!" Haridas said, "I cannot go further. Why did I knowingly come with this restless person? Krishna just saved me from the wrath of the Yavanas, but now, today, I will lose my life due to your mischievous nature." Nityananda said, "I'm not a restless person. Think carefully. It is your Lord who is agitated. Although he is Brahmana, he gives orders like a king. On his instruction, we preach door to door. He gives orders that we have never heard before, and as a result, people call us thieves and hypocrites. If we disobey his order, we'll be ruined, and if we follow his order, this is the result. You do not admit your Lord's fault. Although we both spoke to them, you accuse me of being at fault." In this way, the two Prabhus engaged in blissful quarrels as they watched the two rogues chasing them become confused. They ran towards the Lord's house while the two rogues rolled on the ground, being intoxicated by wine. Unable to see the two Prabhus, the drunkards gave up the chase and eventually began to push and shove each other. Being intoxicated by wine, the two could not remember a thing about where they were before and where they were now. After a while, the two Prabhus looked back and could not see where the two rogues had gone. The two felt pacified and embraced each other. They laughed and then went to see Vishwambar. The lotus side, Mahaprabhu was sitting. The limbs of his body were so beautiful that his form bewildered even Cupid. He was surrounded by the Vaishnavas who were discussing topics of Krishna amongst themselves. The Lord joyfully discussed his own glories in that assembly, just as the Lord of Svetadweep did on the occasion, in the association of the sages headed by Sanaka. At that time, Nityananda and Haridas came before the Lord and reported to him what had happened that day. "Today, we have seen two strange persons. They were great drunkards, yet they called themselves Brahmanas. We nicely requested them to chant the names of Krishna. In response, they chased us, yet we fortunately survived." The Lord said, "Who are those two? What are their names? Why would Brahmanas engage in such activities?" Gangadas and Srivas, who were sitting before the Lord, began to relate the sinful activities of the two. "O Lord, the names of those two are Jagai and Madhya. They are the sons of a pious Brahmana, and they were born here. Due to bad association, they have developed such mentality. They have been attached to drinking wine since their birth." It's a pretty early time to start drinking wine. "Everyone in Nadia is afraid of these two. There is no house that has not been plundered by them. There is no limit to their sinful activities, O Lord. You know and see everything." The Lord said, "I know these two fellows. If they come here, I will cut them to pieces." Nityananda said, "You may cut them to pieces, but I will not go out as long as they are there." "Why do you brag so much? First of all, get these two to chant the name of Govinda." A pious person naturally chants the name of Krishna, but these two do not know anything other than sinful activities. If you deliver these two by awarding them devotional service, then I will know you are Patita Pavana, the deliverer of the fallen. The deliverance of these two will certainly be more glorious than the deliverance of me." Vishwambara smiled and replied, "They were delivered the moment they got your darshan. You are so concerned for their benefit that Krishna will soon arrange for their well-being." On hearing these words from the lotus mouth of the Lord, all the devotees chanted, "Jaya, Jaya, Hari, Hari." They were all convinced that the two were already delivered. Haridas then went before Advaita and spoke as follows. "The Lord sends me with this restless person. He leaves him behind, and who knows where he goes. During the rainy season, there are many crocodiles in the Ganges, and he goes swimming in the waters to catch them. In great anxiety, I call him loudly from the riverbank, but he continually floats around in the waters of the Ganges. If he sees some boys, he comes out of the water and chases them to beat them. When their parents come with sticks in their hands, I fall at their feet and send them back. He steals butter and yogurt from the cowherd men and flees, and they catch me and want to beat me. Whatever he does is unreasonable. When he sees an unmarried girl, he tells her, 'Marry me.' He rides on the back of an ox and declares that he is Mahesh. He takes milk from others' cows and drinks it. When I try to teach him something, he abuses me and says, 'What can your Advaita do to me?' And Sri Chaitanya, whom you consider the Lord, what can he do to me?" I have not said anything about this to the Lord, but today my life has been saved by providence. There were two great drunkards lying in the street, and he went before them to preach Krishna's instructions. In great anger, they rushed to kill us. It is your mercy that our lives have been saved. Advaita smiled and said, "This is not at all astonishing, for drunkards should associate with other drunkards. It is befitting that the three drunkards were together." Who's the third one? Nityananda, Avaduta Nityananda, madman. But by being a celibate, why were you there? Nityananda will make everyone intoxicated. I know his character very well. Just wait and see. Within 2 or 3 days, he will bring those drunkards into our assembly. While speaking in this way, Advaita became overwhelmed with anger. Without any clothing on, he spoke with great emphasis. "Everyone will hear about Lord Chaitanya's devotional service to Krishna, and then they will see his potency, how he dances and chants. You will see tomorrow how Nimai and Nitai will bring the two drunkards to dance with them. They will make the two equal to us, and we will have to run away to save our caste." On seeing Advaita's angry mood, Haridas smiled. He was convinced that the drunkards would be delivered. Who has the power to understand Advaita's words? Only Haridas Prabhu can understand him. Many sinful people take the side of Advaita and criticize Gadadhar. They will be burnt to death. Any sinful person who takes the side of one Vaishnava and blasphemes another Vaishnava is certainly ruined. As the two drunkards wandered from place to place, they came to the bathing ghat where the Lord would take his bath in the Ganges. By divine arrangement, they made that place their base, from which they would go out and raid various places. Whether influential, rich or poor, all people's hearts became filled with fear. No one went to take bath in the Ganges at night, for if they did, they went in groups of 10 or 20. They stayed near the Lord's house and listened to the Lord's kirtan as they remained awake throughout the night. Being intoxicated with wine, they joyfully danced as they listened to the sound of the kartals and mridangas in the kirtan. As they could hear everything from that distance, they would listen, dance, and then drink more wine. Whenever there was kirtan, the two would stay there. When they heard the kirtan, they would get up and dance. They were so overwhelmed by drinking wine that they did not remember where they had been or where they were. When they saw the Lord, they said, "Oh, Nimai Pandit, you should sing the entire song of Mangala Chandi. You have expert singers who we wish to see. We will bring and give you whatever you need." Seeing those miscreants, the Lord kept a distance. Others took another path and fled away. After wandering through the city one day, Nityananda went that night before the two. Jagai and Madhya shouted, "Who are you? Who are you?" Nityananda replied, "I'm going to the Lord's house." Intoxicated by wine, they asked, "What is your name?" Nityananda replied, "My name is Avaduta." Intoxicated in the mood of a child, Lord Nityananda spoke to the drunkards as his pastime. He had already decided, "I will deliver these two." That is why he came there that night. On hearing the name Avaduta, Madhya became angry. He picked up a clay pot and hit the Lord's head. The broken clay pot cut the Lord's head, and blood flowed from the wound. Yet Lord Nityananda simply remembered Govinda. On seeing the blood, Jagai felt compassionate and grabbed the hand of Madhya when he prepared to strike the Lord again. "Why did you do that? You were very cruel. What will you gain by beating an outsider? Leave Avaduta alone. Do not beat him again. What will you gain by beating a sannyasi?" Some people quickly went and informed the Lord, who immediately came there with his associates. The entire body of Nityananda was covered with blood. Yet Nityananda smiled as he stood between the two. When the Lord saw the blood, he lost external consciousness out of anger and repeatedly called out, "Chakra! Chakra! Chakra!" The Sudarshan Chakra immediately appeared there and was seen by Jagai and Madhya. All the Lord's devotees became bewildered. But Nityananda immediately appealed to the Lord as follows: "When Madhya hit me, Jagai saved me. By providence, blood came out, yet I feel no pain. O Lord, give me these two in charity. Please be pacified, for I feel no pain." To be continued tomorrow. Now, of course, there are different versions of all the events leading up to all this, but we're hearing an authorized version, the Vrindavan Das Thakur version, that he heard from those that were present during Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. There's some places in his writing where he considers himself most unfortunate because he did not have the opportunity to directly see and participate in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. But he describes the pastimes as if he's there. You know, the eyewitness got his camera going and taking moving pictures. And so that the technology was different. It was singing and composing the songs that could be sung so that, you know, future generations could understand the nature of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. So obviously the deliverance of Jagai and Madhya is a celebrated part of the Lord Sankirtan movement, the Lord Sankirtan pastimes. And we often hear the appeal by Prabhupada that there are no Jagais and Madhyas like this today, but the small Jagais and Madhyas are abundant. And the principle of indulgence of the senses and losing track of higher purposes of life, as Brahmanas are to know the higher purposes of life, but losing track. So the important principle here is they had not offended until, of course, they threw a clay pot at Nityananda. But they were saved. We heard it. We heard it this morning as well. Those who can be saved are those who are sensually weak or sinful, etc., etc. It's much, much easier in other words, from a bhakti point of view, to relieve people who have committed sin or have sensual weakness than those who are offensive. It's much more difficult. We heard this morning, there's examples from Scripture of those that were sinful, those that had offenses, they were also relieved by powerful Vaishnavas. But who in this world is in the mode of goodness? It's very rare to find such persons. Very, very rare, in the age of Kali in particular. So, Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission was to propagate bhakti through the medium of the purifying agency of the holy name, and following the chanting of the holy name, the other forms and limbs of bhakti. Now, something that may be helpful, now just speaking in practical terms, something that may be helpful in helping people chant the holy name, of course, just going here and there, we heard there were different responses depending upon the mentalities of people. And we also hear different responses depending upon the mentality of people. So it takes faith in the holy name. It may also take some alternative strategies to help bring people to the stage of chanting the holy name. But the principle is, by the chanting of the holy name, that the sinful reactions can be eradicated. And by receiving the mercy of a Vaishnav, the platform of devotional service can be imparted and benefit the recipients. From the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it took some generations, some decades and some generations to get to the point where the teachings, in addition to the chanting of the holy name, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were set down in a written form so people could receive them. And by the distribution of that knowledge, of course, it's not just the books, but it's the people that have imbibed the meaning and the message of the books and then could teach this. That was the method that was used. And those who taught brought others to the point of understanding and following, and they in turn taught others, and so forth and so on. But the distribution of the holy name and the distribution of transcendental literature is an essential part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Again, it took some generations, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't personally write books. He instructed others. They wrote the books, and the books were distributed. So just thinking about this, I don't know how many of you have been listening to the GBC, SPT interviews of different devotees, all on the theme of Chaitanya Charitamrita and different aspects. And what will the face of the world be like going back to the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur? What will the face of the world be like if people come to know who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Because he's not so well known. I mean, one of our members was saying, in my childhood I grew up, and in college age I grew up. Where there are temples where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is known or worshipped, it's very few. Now, with ISKCON, there's many temples. Still, it's few compared to the population of India or the population of the world. But if Prabhupada gave emphasis even more than temples was his books. There's many such things. I mean, that doesn't mean temples are unimportant, but the teachings of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, the teachings of Bhagavatam, the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that are the same as the teachings of Bhagavatam in the practical application. What would the face of the world be like if people in the world now not only come to know Bhagavad Gita and then in turn come to know more about what Srimad Bhagavatam actually is, instead of people that don't really know what Srimad Bhagavatam actually is, come to know about Lord Chaitanya and who Lord Chaitanya actually is. I mean, it's not a large, in general, it's not a large population. We know from Bhagavad Gita. How many people will come to the stage of knowing Krishna? Very few. Manushaham sahasreshu kasyajatati sataye. So it's very, very rare to find persons that are interested, and among those that are interested, those that actually understand Krishna. But as persons can, by that propagation of the holy name and the propagation of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wish. People should know who is Lord Chaitanya and his teachings. It'll have a significant impact, dramatic spiritual impact on society. Bhagavatam and Lord Chaitanya teachings are the same as the Bhagavatam. But what are we to do? The world is getting crazier and crazier and crazier. All around the world and all around us. What to do? List the things that are crazy. Gun violence and on and on and on. So many crazy things. Just sharing, 3 years ago, I won't name the name, one congregation girl, 7 years old, was asking, how do I respond to my friends when they say, why don't you eat meat? She's 10 years old now, and she wrote an essay that's a 10-page essay, well researched on why vegetarianism for her English class. So this, 10-year-old girl, a little bit intimidated because wants to be accepted by her classmates. That, she's now not just saying what Bhagavad Gita says. She's saying, she did her homework. It's, the bibliography at the end is a page and a half long. She did her homework. And it's very well written. So now she has some confidence and she's a strong speaking person. So in within our congregations and people that are outside our congregations as well come into the fold of understanding the teachings of bhakti, the application of the teachings of bhakti, and live by it, and create communities where people live by it. It's going to have and distribute the knowledge. It's going to have a very dramatic impact, because otherwise, what to do? It's crazy. It's getting crazier. It's out of control. So, what to do? And there will be opposition. I mean, that's a little bit in this past time, how people would respond and what to do, because Lord Chaitanya gave us this order, and people are going to respond in, negative ways. Some people appreciating and some people being hostile. So what to do? just this morning, hearing Prabhupada speak in Los Angeles about, he was just mentioning some opposition situations that were happening in the world. And he was insisting, don't be afraid, because opposition will come, but Lord Chaitanya will protect. Don't be afraid. And it was the same message. Just modern times, modern circumstances. We should live our lives in respectable and according to theistic codes of theistic conduct ways. And as we live and as we propagate, this young girl is going to get some pushback from her friends, most likely, but some will also be influenced and say she's right. And, be influenced by the high road. Anyway, what are we going to do? We take the spiritual trajectory in our lives as much as we can, imbibe it, and disseminate it as much as we can. And Krishna is at the center. Okay. More Jagai Madhya tomorrow. They get saved. That's the good news. So let's see if there's some discussion. The technology is working out okay? No glitches. Any comments or thoughts or questions?
Guru Maharaj. Thank you, Guru Maharaj, once again for the wonderful reading. I just wanted to make a comment on when you said about the mercy of Prabhupada's books and about Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's true. Even in my life, I would have never taken to Krishna consciousness, especially in India, and only because here we got introduced in a certain way, and then reading Srimad Bhagavatam, learning so much about who Krishna is, and so much about all my questions got answered. And then also learning about the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, understanding that, because I had never even heard the words Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Gauranga Mahaprabhu, or I had absolutely zero idea about who he was, and back in India. So yeah, it was
Prabhupada's mercy.
Totally Prabhupada's mercy. Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj.
And we're meant to be, assistants, small ones, but assisting him in some way.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. My question is, why it is so difficult? Why it is so difficult to get into the spiritual life?
Well, there's nice stories that explain that. But the short answer is, I can tell the story. The short answer is we're holding on very tightly to our material attachments. You've heard the story, right? The disciple asks his guru, why is it difficult? The guru says, it's a very profound question. Come back tomorrow, and I'll give you the answer. You know that story? No. So the disciple goes to his home. His guru lives out in the forest. So he goes along the path. He's thinking, I'm going to get this answer to this very important question. So the next day, bright and early, the sun comes up. as he's approaching the Guru's ashram, he hears this voice, "Help, help." It's my Guru's voice. And he sees him, his arms are wrapped around a tree and he's calling out, "Help, help." And he tries to release him, and he pulls and he pulls and pulls, and finally the Guru stands up and says, "So there's the answer." It's very difficult because we're holding on so tightly. Holding on so tightly. And once we're in that situation, it requires, the example, you can't free yourself if you're bound, but if someone who's unbound can release you. So it takes someone who's, having the good fortune, and when one gets the good fortune of someone who's unbound, to then willingly follow what that unbound person says, but so why don't we do that? Because we're holding on tightly. And the other example is, the wedding party and not pulling the anchor in that story. Because we're still holding on to our material attachments. It's not difficult, but it's difficult because we're holding on. That's what makes it difficult. And then we let go of some of the easier ones to let go of, and then we're holding on to some other ones. And we're holding on. So it just slows down progress.
Pranam Guru Maharaj. Indulekha Mataji said how Bhagavatam has inspired her. I love listening to Bhagavatam. I can read it all day long, can listen to it all day long.
Wow.
My struggle is chanting. I have to force myself to sit for a couple hours. But Indulekha Mataji always keeps asking, how many rounds? And is one better than the other?
Is what?
Is
reading enough?
No, which is better if it has...
Which is better?
I mean, maybe...
Which is better? Which is better between what and what?
Reading the scriptures and chanting.
Well, they're both better. But of the two, if you have to select, the holy name. But, the holy name is within the scriptures. Isn't it?
Yeah.
There's many other things, but the holy name is also there within the scriptures. The Yuga Dharma, you know the answer.
Yeah.
Yuga Dharma is Hare Nama, Hare Nama. So it's the holy name that's the deliverer in this age. Now, the deliverer is Lord Chaitanya because he gave the holy name, but it's the holy name. So, continue studying eagerly and enthusiastically, and because from that, from the Bhagavatam, Shivata Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana. Punya, so the cleansing is going on, and spiritual piety is being awakened just by the hearing and chanting the scripture, Krishna Katha.
Is there something like extra addiction of reading too much of
No.
this?
if that's a good addiction.
It's a good addiction, yeah.
Don't worry about that addiction. That's a good one.
Yeah.
But the specific question is, what about I don't have attraction to the chanting is something we should do. It's must do. Is the Yuga Dharma. And so along with your attraction or addiction or fascination or happiness in reading, you do some of the chanting also, because it's the prime benediction, it's the Yuga Dharma. And slowly,
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Mask down? Yeah, I can hear you better if you take your mask down. Thanks. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for enlightening us. I had a question regarding deity worship. We have so many people who are aspiring devotees, and they have different deities in their house, on the altar. There are different demigods and so forth. So what advice, how should we as devotees try to get them to the level of worshipping Radha Krishna without disrespecting the demigods as well at the same time? And that was first question. The second question is, I know Srila Prabhupada would encourage devotees staying outside the temple to have Gaur-Nitai deities rather than Radha Krishna deities. But nowadays, everybody has Radha Krishna deities. So how do we, try to go about that? Thank you.
Gently. My experience is that when there are persons in that category, that it need not be addressed initially. What needs to be addressed initially is sadhu sangha, and the in general the messages of devotional service to Krishna, Bhagavad Gita. And as that starts to become understood, and there's not a stick in your hand, you're just explaining what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, and they feel affinity for the devotee association that Krishna has provided for them, they start asking those questions. And when the relationship is right, even if they don't ask those questions, some gentle suggestions can be made. You're familiar with what it says in Bhagavad Gita, such and such and such. And when the time is right, you can consider following this standard. Anyway, gently, gradually, resting upon the relationship and trust they have in you, or the person who they have relationship with, that they're not being disrespected, or they're not being disrespectful, because that's one of the concerns that people naturally have. They don't want to be disrespectful to something that they've been doing for some time, or their grandmother did, or something like that. It evolves as bhakti evolves naturally. Those kinds of questions arise, or can be asked somebody to contemplate. That's the demigod topic. And sometimes people, depends. They're just not ready. So it's best to not make a big issue about it. Let bhakti awaken in a natural, because in other words, the layout of what's on their altar often is not so much deep, it's more tradition. It's those kinds of feelings, religious tradition kinds of feeling. It's not, if their bhakti is not deeply rooted, then making a transition between this and that is just another cosmetic change. Let it come, ideally, let it come from a place of understanding and devotion to Krishna. Depends on person to person. And the topic of, Radha Krishna worship versus Gaur-Nitai worship. When people already have Radha Krishna worship, let them understand this is a really high standard, and try to make yourself qualified, rather than switch from this to that. If they already have, and that's their affinity, become qualified, not with pressure or guilt or something, but this is really. And you've taken a big step, inviting Radha Krishna in your home. You come to the standard, because they don't. If they knew people, they already have. they don't really know what standards are. And so we don't intimidate them, just encourage, so they can start to understand, wow, that's the standard. Anyway, again, it's just gradual awakening of bhakti so they can be fit to do that service. Okay.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj, for a wonderful pastime and the class. My question is, you were explaining about the opposition that we face towards the Krishna consciousness movement. Like Jagai Madhya were did not have the affinity to begin with. We face it in today's time also, Maharaj. And the problem is not the people who are very, very averse, but sort of good people who are intelligent people, and it's just that they don't believe in Krishna. And if we are in association of such people, how do we conduct ourselves in front of them? Because in my experience, I mean, they know my practices and they do talk about it, but they don't accept it and they try to refute also. And they are, as I said, intelligent people. They are Hindu, they are religious, but it's just that they don't follow Krishna consciousness. So they have their own arguments.
Well, again, it depends. It's case by case, but I would say three things. We don't get in their face about, who we are, why we do what we do, and if we know that they have their reservations or differing views, we don't engage in a projecting upon them something that we know is going to agitate their minds. We don't do that. If they just have a different point of view, we acknowledge they have a different point of view. As we have a different point of view than theirs, they have a different point of view than ours, and we don't engage in argumentation or defeating their point of view and asserting our point of view or something. We don't do that. If they inquire, then that's something else. If they inquire, but if they inquire in the mood of I want to have a debate with you, I want to argue with you, that's not a good place to go. And a third is maybe the most compelling, and that is achar will speak stronger than your prachar. If you consistently have good character, good qualities, and they continue to manifest, and they're substantial and steady, that's compelling. So, in other words, their respect will go to Krishna Bhakti, even they have a different point of view. By the qualities of the Krishna Bhakta, they'll respect Krishna Bhakti. Achar is better than prachar, especially in those circumstances. But in general, it's true, but especially in those circumstances.
Thank you.
And if some question arises, not in the mood of defeating an opposition, but in the mood of just offering scripturally based understandings of why this and why that. Because often it comes to why. Sometimes it's what, but so often it's why. So just have if you're grounded in scripture, your character is good, and you're not an argumentative, bashing person.
Thank you. My question is, I think when you were answering his question, you said that we are holding on tightly
Yeah.
and that is why we cannot hard to enter spiritual. So how do we not
go.
how do we let go? And more importantly, how do we know that we are making progress?
Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I like his answer. To me, it's just satisfying. So I'll just give his answer. There's two main things. To understand how we are progressing is the attraction, the affinity towards objects of the senses is subsiding. The enjoying the object of the senses spirit is subsiding. To some degree at least. And the attraction for hearing is increasing. Very simple. You know, that you can say here's another. You know, what I understand are my shortcomings. Like, I'm thinking of some cases where persons have made it like a little testimonial in a setting like this of becoming freed from anger just by hearing topics of Krishna. Someone shared that at a Bhakti Vriksha gathering, like multiple Bhakti Vriksha groups gathering together. He was sharing this. Just by attending the Bhagavad Gita discussion, this long-standing tendency he's had since childhood has just went away, or significantly went away, and he was giving this kind of 20-minute description of the thing. Just from he had attraction for Bhagavad Gita, but he never really understood it. He had faith in it, but he never really understood it for, so many years. This, that, the other. Then attending this discussion of Bhagavad Gita as it is in the association of devotees, he found this thing which he's taken anger management courses and other things because he knows it's a problem. Didn't really significantly help, but just advancement for him was measured by this slackening of this anger problem. Not like it's, totally gone, but probably, but then there's other layers and layers, but that bhakti process helps one deal with the layers and layers of unwanted things in the heart. Something in the back here.
This is again coming to the altar question, Maharaj.
Which one?
The altar.
The altar question. Okay.
Yeah. We have Krsna in our Prahlad Maharaj in different forms. Like the Madhvacharyas, they consider Raghavendra Swami as an incarnation of Prahlad Maharaj. It's in the south. I come from the total southern tradition.
Kerala? Udupi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Madhvacharya is fully Udupi.
You grew up there?
It's my grandparents' house, very close to the temple.
Okay, fine.
The temple where we used to play when we were young.
Okay.
And so they're steadfast. These people are extremely steadfast believers in this Raghavendra Swami, who's considered the incarnation of Prahlad Maharaj.
Okay.
And then I personally come from we have family deities. My mom's side, the family deity is Mohini. Vishnu's avatar.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
And on my dad's side, Ramanatha is again Shiva, but established by Rama. So that's my tradition that I come from, and I have them all on my altar, Maharaj. So nobody knows who they are, but I know who they are for me. It's just came to my mind as well. So it's like you said, it's tradition. My parents kept it, and I was given it to keep it.
Yeah.
But one more thing just to share. I used to go to our temple here for the past 27 years.
You used to go.
No, I still go.
you
I
still
have
go,
I have
okay.
always gone for the. I mean, I've been going for 27 years. Better
27 years.
Yes, and
You don't look that old. That was a joke.
I didn't hear.
I've been going to the temple for 51 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, my
This
goodness.
temple, Maharaj?
Huh?
This temple?
No. Temples, ISKCON, Prabhupada's temples.
I'm going for that many years too because I grew up next to Udupi Krishna
Okay.
Krishna temples. But I'm talking about
Okay.
our temple
okay.
here.
Okay.
Somehow I never got involved. I went there only for Krishna and Krishna only. Because that's where I grew up.
Okay.
But then I got into Indulekha Mataji's group. Now I love to listen all about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda. Now I am addicted to.
You're being infected.
Yes. And of course, Haripriya and Naveen Prabhu were the first ones who kind of encouraged me. This was, oh my gosh, almost 20 years ago. So, yeah. And I am so happy to be among all of them. To be among these devotees. And the satsang, we have almost every day different version of a satsang. Yes.
You're in good shape. Maybe the pandemic will last longer because it'll be good for you.
We did even not during the pandemic, all the time, Maharaj, we did.
Okay.
Pandemic didn't stop us. We did different versions, different ways. And I'm very, very, very thankful for Bayari Prabhu ji because, my gosh, I can't tell you how much inspiration I have get and how much, it's tremendous.
Well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not only his pastimes, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made very clear what the message of Srimad Bhagavatam is, the position of Krishna in his most exalted of all places in Vrindavan, the kind of love of the residents of Vrindavan in comparison to the love of the residents of Krishna or the lovers of Krishna outside of Vrindavan. Lord Chaitanya made that very, very, very clear. Now, that is not what's prevalent in Udupi, but the love that's there for Krishna in Udupi is love for Krishna. But the very special love of the residents of Vrindavan is certainly a major part of the Bhagavatam, a major part of the Katha that we hear about Krishna is Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. So that you'll understand more and more and more through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. And, as you go further with that, who knows what's going to happen with what's on your altar and, traditions that you follow. And it doesn't mean you reject things, but just, you grow and mature and the Kripa of Bhakti becomes matured. And you start to see things and feel things differently. We're going to do some online questions because we don't want to leave them feel neglected, because they sometimes say that.
The first question is from Atulya. Guru Maharaj, if it is so difficult to become fully Krishna conscious, what hope to hold on to? I struggle with so many difficult thoughts in the mind, like Jagai and Madhya inside. What is the hope to take shelter of? What hope to take shelter of?
Guru Kripa and Krishna Kripa. mercy. You take shelter there. Because, the one who has, in the words of Krishna Das Kaviraj, one who has faith in Lord Chaitanya can easily, a lame man can easily climb mountains. I really like that phrase because I once had a meniscus tear in my knee. It was really hard just to walk upstairs. What to speak of climb a mountain? But one who has faith in Krishna, even a lame man, can climb a mountain. A blind man can see the stars in the sky. Even a fool can understand the conclusive truths of the Vedas by that faith in Lord Chaitanya. So get his mercy. That's what you can take hold of, take shelter of. You continue to do what you can do according to your capacity. Sincerely, you try to do your best as you can do. And knowing we have a long way to go, you rely on mercy. That's our program. Welcome to the club. The Calling Out for Mercy Club.
Vishaka, her daughter, 7 years old. Her question is, how do I know if I'm lacking in something and have to improve on or work on it?
Ask your sister. Or, when you read or hear just, topics, Krishna Katha topics, you'll find, wow, look at that, and look at that, and look at that. And, there's lots of things that we're lacking in and we need. When you shine light on something, you can see what's there. When you shine light on what's inside the heart, you'll see, there's something unwanted. There's something unwanted. So you'll find just by the process of hearing, you'll see things that need to be worked on, the improvements that are needed. Negatively, if you don't read, you don't have that kind of the sound vibration association. You won't see because the light will be out. When they turn the light on, you can see. Just like you like reading, you probably find all kinds of things from your reading. Wow, there's lots of room for improvement over here. Right? Our hostess who was saying she likes reading. Yeah, so it comes that way.
Next question is from Priyanka, Akshay's wife.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and your lotus feet. I personally have challenges with being focused. When it comes to listening or reading, there are times where I involve myself with a lot of enthusiasm, but then I'm unable to sustain it. I feel I give up easily with the justification that I deserve a break. How do I move away from this loop? Is there a measure for me to understand if hearing and reading is bringing a change?
Sure. The loop gets shorter. And, it's bhakti requires a sustained effort because we're conditioned, or we're holding on tightly to stuff, and the stuff can be external or internal and within the mind. It requires consistent effort. I'm chuckling because this is this indifference topic again. The slackening of submission is on the free will choice platform, and we're conditioned to free will choose indifference, which leads to material absorption quickly. What to speak of, how many lifetimes we've been at it. It's very habitual. So to break that habit, you have to form another habit, and the other habit is Abhyasa yoga. You continue to practice. and then they're slackening again, and then you pick yourself up and you strive again. So it's just continue yoga practice, abhyasa yoga yoktena, chetasananya gamino. You strive, moving towards the next step, the next step, the next step, and you keep moving.
Next question is from Sanchari. Guru Maharaj, at the beginning of class, when you were reading about the reaction of the surrounding villagers to Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur's plight, you read that the atheists thought that they were getting what they deserved and the Brahmanas were praying for their rescue. May you please clarify who the atheists in this text refer to? Was it ritualistic Brahmanas, Mayavadis, or pure atheists?
Probably all of the above. It doesn't specify. In earlier chapters, Vrindavan Das makes an effort to give little cameo shots of different types of people. So there's all the different ranges of different types of people. So all of those different types of people, they lived in Navadvip at that time. That's it. Are we done? Okay. Well, hang on. Induleka had her hand up before we went to online.
Guru Maharaj, my question was kind of a follow-up on when you the statement that you made about we holding on to our material attachments. Many times we don't even know that we are what those material attachments are, that we are actually holding on to them, thinking that they are just blessings in our life and we're so fortunate. We have this and we have this and we have this. And so how do we distinguish and separate ourselves from this tendency?
Attachment to Krishna. The things are not the problem. It's the attachment to the things that's the problem. And the attachment is, gross or subtle, enjoying spirit of something. So the letting go is coming to the stage where there's only one thing. I mean, here's this real nice definition we read the other day. It was in relation to the Shikshastaka 6. Did I send you that document? So it's there. Purity, a nice definition of purity is where what is important to you, there is nothing else but priti. He uses that word, that your loving relationship with Krishna. It's the things is not the problem. It's the attachment that keeps our attention away from Krishna. That's the problem. That's the attachment, the enjoying tendency. It's gone when there's attachment to Krishna, attachment to the relationship of loving service to Krishna, and that's it. And there's nothing else, and everything else is there, but it's all in relation to that one thing. That's the goal.
So Maharaj, on that atheist question, I was just thinking whether we can consider the people who are not worshipping Krishna. Basically, they're worshipping demigods. Can they also be considered atheists to a certain degree?
Yes and no. In a orthodox sense, yes. And in a broader sense, well, they're accepting some higher authority, and so they're not abject atheists. That is to say, they're within the Vedic system. Within the Vedic system, there's demigod worship, so they're accepting the authority of the Vedas and going to the demigods for things they want. So they're not abject atheists, but they're not They're atheists of another kind. They're not accepting the source of all things. In that sense, atheist. This gentleman over here, you usually have a nice question. Or a few of them.
I think everyone that.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, you have thoughtful questions. Well, I think we're done. Yes? Srila Prabhupada ki